but I'm not going to complain. I'm stuck, quote unquote, in Florida.
Yeah.
So feel a little guilty, but you know how that goes.
Mhm. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good to have you all with us. Drew, do you believe everyone's in so far that you've got?
Yeah, we just keep getting a couple
Oh,
people
yep.
joining here and there, so I'll keep checking to make sure they are able to get in.
Well, welcome everybody to the first legislative briefing for the 2025 session of the General Assembly. So we're going to be meeting like this every second and fourth Friday through session, which should wrap up at the end of April. Now, there will be times where maybe there's nothing to report, um, and we may cancel or forego a meeting here or there. But for the most part, we'll be here twice a month to give you a briefing. Furthermore, we will be sending you, once it arrives to us, a bill track list. And that list will be by way of a link. So it'll be updated um, in, in real time so that you'll be able to check periodically to see what the status is of the bills that we are tracking. Now, the process with ITA works like this. There is a legislative committee, and it is currently chaired by Ralph Flowers and Lydia Wales. And that committee meets prior to session to talk about our strategies for the upcoming session and to discuss any changes in statute or additions to statute that the committee believes would be beneficial for us. That report is then goes before the board of directors to be further vetted and adjusted and then adopted. Now, that kind of charts the course for us as to how we're going to develop positions on different bills. Some of this has been created over the course of many years. For example, if there's a bill to eliminate township boards, we know we're going to strongly oppose. We have our positions down as to why we're opposing it. So some of these are positions that are implemented from time to time when these onerous bills pop back up. Of course, our preference is to advance township government and to enhance laws that allow us to fulfill our missions in our townships and move in a more efficient and effective way. That's what we strive for, is efficiency and effectiveness as township government leaders. So this morning, as I go through the presentation, please use the chat feature to place your questions. Drew Durham, I don't see him on camera right now, but Drew is our associate director, and he will be monitoring your questions and bringing those up for us to answer. Okay, so I don't know in this audience what your experience is with how a bill becomes law in Indiana. So I'm just going to take a minute to show you basically the 10 steps for a bill to become law. You can read that, and I'm just going to give an overview. And it starts with a member of the General Assembly determining they want to change statute. And they would ask for that to be written by the Legislative Services Agency, which is part of state government. And those writers, lawyers, accountants, and so forth help draft the language in accordance to that legislator's request. So most legislators will not physically sit down and write a bill, but they'll give an outline to LSA, who will then write the language. Then it'll go through an analysis by a fiscal person, and they will produce the fiscal analysis, which is I'll show you where you can find those. Many times the fiscal analysis will tell you more than reading the actual bill draft. So once these bills are written, then they'll be introduced in the House of Origin, whether it's the House or Senate, and they'll have what's called first reading. They don't really stand there and read the bill. They'll read the title of the bill and they will assign it to committee. It goes through the committee process, which is at least one hearing or more on a particular bill. Now, chairman of committees, depending on the leaders, their leadership, whether it's the Senate pro tem or the House Speaker, the minority leader, or the in either House or Senate, would kind of set parameters for their leadership in the chairman and give them the authority to either hear a bill or not hear a bill. Many times leadership or the caucus will press on certain issues, and of course they develop their own agenda, and bills related to those adopted agendas, they would push to move those forward. That would be their priority. So there is some leeway for chairpersons to not hear a bill that has been assigned to their committee. So after it goes through the committee process, if it passes committee, it'll go to the floor. And that's for a second reading. And on second reading, that's typically where you will see any debate or not necessarily a lot of debate unless it's on an amendment. So you'll see second reading amendments happen, and they may debate the amendments. Then it has to sit for, I believe it's 48 hours. It could be 24, but then it comes back for the third hearing. And that's when members will go to the podiums and debate. They'll have a vote. If it passes, then that bill is sent to the other side or the other house to repeat that whole process. Now, if changes are made to a bill once it flips houses, then it has to go back to the House of Origin, and that house has to either concur with what the opposite house did to it, or it goes to what's called conference committee. Conference committee is comprised of 4 people, 1 from each caucus. So the Republican House caucus, the Democrat House caucus, Senate Democrats, and Senate Republicans. The leaders of each of those caucuses would appoint a person to sit on that conference committee. Typically, it includes the author and the sponsor. The sponsor is the person when the bills flip, as it says in step 7, when those bills flip, then there has to be a sponsor that's going to carry that legislation in their respective house. Okay. So typically you're going to see the author, the sponsor, and 2 others assigned to conference committee. The reason I'm going into a little bit of detail here is because there's a real good chance we're going to be dealing with conference committees, especially on bills that are of high importance or those that are controversial. Okay. So if the House, after it goes through the second side, if the House of origination rejects the committee report, they don't concur, and it goes to conference committee, those 4 individuals are responsible to negotiate a path where both will agree, or all 4 people will agree, both houses agree. And then you have a conference committee report that goes back to both houses and is adopted. Typically, if there's a conference committee report that is signed by all 4, it's probably going to pass, but sometimes those don't. Okay. And the final step then is for the bill to be sent to the governor for their review, and they can sign off on it, or they have a certain amount of time that they can veto it. Okay. So that's my lesson in how a bill becomes law. Any questions on that or clarification needed? We good? Okay. So next, I wanted you to be aware of session deadlines. Yesterday was the deadline for Senate bills to be filed, and next Tuesday is the deadline for the House bills to be filed. And once those are filed, they will be set for first reading in their respective houses. But you will see the dates here that the most important dates I'll point out are February 20th. And February 20th is the last day for the third reading of House or Senate bills. So these bills originate in the House or Senate, and they have until February 20th to get it passed or over the line so it can flip houses. If it doesn't make it before the gavel comes down on February 20th, it is considered dead. Okay. That's where a lot of these bad bills we try to work so that they die and they don't ever make it to the other side. Once a bill is passed by the House of the original House, then let's say we have a House bill that we've been working to defeat, but it gets passed and goes over to the Senate. Then our work begins to try to get the Senate not to hear it. Okay, so that it goes away for the most part. But when we get back to conference committees, that language is considered live, or it's still alive, so that they can take language that only passed one house and amend it into a bill in conference committee. And this is where it gets a bit treacherous, and we have to all come, we have to keep our eyes and ears open, especially during that period of time for these amendments, because they can be quite tricky. Okay. And then the last date I'll point out here is Tuesday, April 29th, and session statutorily must conclude by that date. Right now, their calendars reflect that they are going to finish April 15th, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay. All right. Now, I want to point out to you, in case you haven't seen, we are having a legislative conference this year. It's February 10th and 11th, and this is the outline on the screen of the agenda for those 2 days. You will be getting more detail, but for today, I wanted you to at least get an understanding of where we're headed with the conference and point out that the legislative reception is on Tuesday, February 11th from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Hilton. That is the most important part of this conference for your attendance. If you can only come to the reception, you need to register for the conference and then just come to the reception. The price is still the same. These receptions are quite expensive, and we will need your participation financially, but more importantly, we need you there. ITA has a record of high attendance by legislators to our reception. Okay. Same with state office holders. We've had several seated governors attend our legislative reception. And there's nothing worse than, Representative so-and-so walking in and saying, hey, anybody here from my district? And we have to say no. That's no fun, because that legislator is coming to see people from their district. They're not coming to see the rest of us. While some may hang around and still visit, I've seen legislators grab a bite and then just leave. So your attendance there is extremely important. The way that it's set up is a room full of round tables. We will have kind of a seating chart so that we can find you. The legislative committee will be responsible for greeting legislators when they come in, and then we will connect them with people from their district. So again, I can't reiterate enough how important it is that, if at all possible, you please attend. And I'm going to ask right now, at the bottom of your screen should be an option to raise your hand. Not like this, but a little button that puts your hand up. We'd like to see how many of you are planning to attend. So if you don't mind doing that, it'd be great. Okay. All right. And I believe I already went through this a little bit, but you can see here the outline for what ITA does in order to prepare to lobby or advocate, educate legislators to potential legislation. And ITA coordinates and offers testimony when that is called for. And we inform you, the members, when we need to activate you or have specific action that is needed, which we do have one ready to go today. So I'll be briefing you on that. But in the meantime, year round, we ask that you build a relationship with your state reps, with your senators, anyone that represents any part of your township. So it's not just where you live. It's, some townships are divided and have multiple reps, or possibly even split with senators. So you need to develop a relationship with all of those. The best lobbying is when you are speaking to someone, you have the most influence if you have a relationship. If you're just going from your position to their position and expecting them to listen and respect our positions, you might be expecting too much. So please work on that relationship. Invite them to have coffee with you on a weekend, even during session. But off session time, that's the time to be working on these relationships. They are vital. I'm going to share a quick story that I've shared with many of you before, but 2 years ago, it was in 21, we had a bill that centered around the idea that in cities, we don't need to have townships. And we were working to defeat it in committee, and we were short one vote. And I was polling each of the committee members and having one-on-one meetings with them. And I came to one legislator that was fairly new. And he said, I just really don't know what I'm going to do. And the vote was the next day. Well, after I left his office, I found a trustee in his district. I didn't know this person, but I knew that they were a trustee near where the legislator lived. I gave her a call, told her what was going on, and said, all I need you to do is to get a hold of him and explain to him what you do inside your town and your township, that this person was inside a town impacted by the bill, and tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do. And that next morning I circled back to the legislator and he said, I got a call from one of my trustees last night, and I want to assure you I'm not going to vote for this bill. That's the power of one voice. Okay. So keep that in mind. Your voice is extremely important in this process. Okay. Now we do what's called bill tracking, and we hire an outside firm that will review bills for impact to townships and then circulate back to us what bills they have located that they believe would have an impact. We review those and determine whether or not, yes, that's going to impact us. So let's add it to our bill track list. Okay. So we keep a running list that I mentioned earlier. You'll have a link to it. And meanwhile, you and especially the legislative committee will also be reading and reviewing bills to look for impact, because we need to do that. In addition to having a firm do that, we need to do our own work as well. Okay. Now, on our bill track list thus far are 6 bills. Here are 4 of them that just were discovered last night, and we have not had time to delve into them. But a cursory look at the summary tells us that, yes, they would impact us. House Bill 1110, as it says, it bans gratuities for public officials. Looks like it's an ethics type bill that we will likely want to support. But again, as I say, potential positions on these are not final positions. These are just a projection of what we might do. 1134 opens executive sessions up a little bit for the township board to have executive sessions for, I believe it's 3 or 4 other reasons or agenda items that currently you cannot have executive session for. That's, our scope for executive sessions is very narrow. And so this bill opens it up just a bit. 1140 is Eviction Assistance Grant Program. This is going to take some research to understand what they're trying to do here. But it appears townships would have access to some of this eviction assistance grant money. And again, haven't had a chance to really dive in yet. And 1193 is the elimination of township assessors. We still have 13 township assessors, mostly in the northern part of the state, but Representative Lauer is looking to eliminate those positions. And there's a lot of representatives in that Republican House caucus that agree with this idea. Don't know what its chances are in the Senate. That's where it's usually defeated, but they're going to try this again. We typically stay neutral on it. Township assessors are not within the purview of township government, even though people seem to think that because it says, township. They're actually under the county assessor's guidance and the county's budget. So we really don't have them in township government per se. Okay. So now I'm going to, I said there were 6 bills we're going to cover, and here is number 5, and it's Senate Bill 99. And this is being authored by Lakeisha Jackson, and she is from District 34, which is part of Indianapolis. And this was first read on Thursday and referred to local government. So it's going to Senate local government, chaired by Jim Buck. And our position would based upon the assumptions that have been made through the years, is this would be something we would want to support because it just gives us more discretion, and it's a may sort of thing, but it amends the definition of shelter to allow us to with our discretion determine if that is appropriate to pay through township assistance dollars on behalf of a client. And I want to pause here to catch up and see if we have any questions. Okay. Very good. All right, now for the.
I had a question,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson. So this particular bill will amend the definition of shelter so it can include any form of dwelling.
Yes.
It could be a hotel.
At the discretion of the trustee, yes. It would still come down to what you put in your township standards and guidelines that would have to be adopted by your board.
Okay.
So it's still your decision, your discretion. We get requests for guidance many times. I'll give you an example. Several times a year, a trustee will ask, listen, I have a household that's living at a campground in their camper. Are we permitted to pay for their lot rent for them to live there? Well, nothing says we can't, but it doesn't fit the norm. Senate Bill 99, I believe, would leave that to our discretion, which is kind of what we're doing in practice. So our guidance back to the trustee is, well, it depends. There's a lot of investigation that needs to take place, and we'll guide them through some of that. But it still comes down to the trustee's decision. Is this the most economical and effective way to house this household?
Okay.
You mentioned hotels. You know, some townships don't have shelters at all.
Right.
And their only option with a homeless situation many times is to use a hotel.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of examples there.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I know in the past I've had to reach out to attorney, Bill, to Bellamy and ask him, Jeff, to ask him, if that was I able to do that. So this is good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Annette. And I know that Senator Jackson, she's new. Senator Breaux passed away this past year, and Lakeisha Jackson was seated as her replacement there in the Senate. And by the way, Lakeisha Jackson sits on the Senate Local Government Committee. So it's great to have a good relationship with her, Annette. I know you do. Okay. So I told you we were going to talk about a bill that we have already attached an action to for you, and that is House Bill 1233. I'll let you kind of read this for a second, but I know some people are driving, so I'm going to run down the key components to House Bill 1233, which is authored by Karen Engelman. Karen is from Harrison County down south, former county auditor. And this bill dropped on the 9th and was referred to the House Committee on Local Government. Many of you have heard me say that almost all of our bills go to government and regulatory reform. But it sort of surprised us to see that it dropped into local government when it's actually a reform bill. And I failed to put the title on here, but it is Local Government Reorganization is the title of the bill. Okay. This provides that township government is dissolved, goes away. The county executive, or in most counties, that's the commissioners, would assume the duties of the trustee for fire and EMS services. All fire territories and districts are dissolved January of 27. County adopts a county fire and emergency services plan. And that is what the county executive runs the fire protection from. And the day-to-day operations is done by the county emergency management director. So they would be acting as the fire chief for the county. There would be an elected county trustee to administer township assistance or assistance, whatever they call it then. And then there are various other provisions, including the dissolution of certain unincorporated towns. So I'll give you just a second, let your brain wrap around this one. So I've already put on here our position. I think it's safe to assume we would strongly oppose such measures. The links down here, and we will post this PowerPoint presentation. I hope. Drew, is that possible for us to do that after the meeting?
Yeah, I was telling
I'll
some
send it
folks
to
here,
you.
when I
Yep.
get it from you, I'll get it up and I'll
Okay.
post the recordings. I'll make a section for legislative
Mhm.
briefings.
Okay. So here are the links to get you to the introduced version of the bill. And as I mentioned earlier, there are fiscal notes or a fiscal analysis with every bill. And I would like to share with you this other screen. One moment here. Here we go. So if you go to iga.in.gov, you will see this. Click on Home if you're not already there, and scroll down. You'll see notices, bills for the 2025 session. And further here, well, of course it's doing it differently than it did every other time I've done this. You can see, well, I'll show you another way then. Let's see here. So you can come to the pull down here as well, go to bills, and you will see all the bills that have been introduced listed here. Okay, so if we go to 1130, let's see. Sorry, already forgot the number, 1233. Here, it'll bring up the digest of the bill. To the left, you can look up the latest version, the latest fiscal note. You'll be able to look at the actions of the bill. You can see here it's just had first reading, assigned to committee. You'll be able to look at amendments, the votes, the different versions as the amended reports come out, committee reports, and so forth. So this, if you really want to engage and be a part of this process, you will probably be visiting the IGA website quite a bit. Okay. On the bill track list that you will be receiving with links, there will be links to take you straight to these bills. But just going back here, this is where we can always use help. The committee will be kind of divvying up the list and reviewing bills, but don't assume that we have seen everything. You know, when we're talking about hundreds of bills, really over 1,000 bills, it's possible to miss something, right? So especially in some of the larger bills that have a variety of, or their scope is broad, say the budget bill, things like that. We need help to read and identify areas that it would impact us. And for you to notify us is very important. Okay. All right. So this is what we're facing, and what we're going to be sending to all townships is a call to action on 1233. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about for just a minute. I've already said the importance of building relationships and using those relationships to influence your legislators. And we need you to reach out immediately to them on 1233. At this point, the idea is for you to let them know this bill is coming. Most of them probably aren't aware of it. Those that are may not know what all it does. So reaching out to them, telling them, listen, House Bill 1233, I'm strongly opposing it, and asking for you to oppose it as well. Ask them to look at the bill and to speak up to their leadership, to the House leadership. We're talking about contacting House members at this point. There's no need to contact senators on this particular bill at this stage in the game. But be sure that your representatives know about the bill and have an idea of what it does. And you can see the box there. Those are the key components to the bill that you can educate them on a little bit. And again, ask them to speak to their leadership. The caucuses meet individually, or they meet as a caucus almost every day of session. And when they do, the bills that are coming forward are brought up for discussion, or any member of that caucus would be able to bring up and speak to their opinion on what is happening, even if they're not on that particular committee. Does that make sense? So when they caucus, we want this to be brought up and spoken to as let's not even hear it. Okay.
Hey,
So
Debbie.
right now we're going to work to see that Chairman May does not hear the bill. Okay.
Debbie,
Yes.
hey, can you make it, you have it, it's not in the presenter mode again, it's kind of in like what you would see screen. So it's hard to read.
Oh, I see.
Hey, Debbie, do you have who'd you say the chairman was?
Chairman May, but I'm asking for you not to contact him at this point, please.
Okay.
We
That's changed.
are meeting with him on Monday,
Okay.
and there may be a point where we ask for that action, but at this point, it's just important for the reps to know that this is coming.
So it's not the same chairman as last year, I assume.
No, it's a different committee.
Oh.
So many times bills like this, or every time I've seen a bill like this, it has gone to Government and Regulatory Reform Committee, which I think, Mark, I think I'm recognizing your voice. This is Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, I believe that that's the committee you are most familiar with, because that's
Miller. Is it
but-
Doug Miller?
Yes, but this is assigned to the House Local Government Committee.
Okay.
Okay.
So, okay. I just wondered if it was any changes for that committee.
Nothing drastic for the committee. Now, those committee lists are also available on the IGA website.
I'll wait until you tell me that we can beat up on Doug Miller, so that won't be a problem.
Okay. All right.
You know how that's going to be.
Okay. So this call to action will be coming directly to you. I hope today. I'm just dropping this on Drew right now. So we want to get this out to everybody before the weekend, in hopes that you'll make contacts before next week. Questions? Wow.
I have a question.
Mhm.
It seems like the Engelman lady seems to keep coming back for more all the time. Do we have somebody that can run against that poor lady?
I'm not sure.
It'd be nice to get her to move on.
Yeah, her philosophical approach is based on she thinks we have too many government units. She's told me that many times. There's just too many governments and we need to reduce.
Can we get rid of some of the legislator?
Very interesting. There is a bill to change the General Assembly from meeting every year to just biannually. So the short sessions would go away and there would be term limits imposed on legislators.
That would be
Be
nice. We'd
interesting
get
to
her,
see if
we'd get rid of her.
be interesting to see if that bill gets a hearing.
Okay.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I will bid you adieu and wish you a good rest of the day and enjoy your weekend. So thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Just a quick question. So we're done with this meeting, correct?
Yes, we just need everyone to exit and then we will have the committee meet.
Do I need to stay on or I can go off?
You can go off and come right back into the waiting room.
Okay, so I'll go into the waiting room. Okay.
Mhm. Hmm. Hey, Drew, you pick up? Hi, everybody again, or hello again, everybody. Are we all in? I don't know if Drew, you can assess where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, the only person that's not in is I don't know who John,
John Henry?
no, John Harkis is in the waiting room.
I'm here, Deb.
Hey, John, how are you?
Just fine.
Good. Haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay. Well, good to hear your voice.
We're missing Lydia.
I don't
Miss-
know.
Protection here.
Can somebody ding Lydia and
Lydia.
Ralph and Kay? Maybe they
Kay's there.